Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 RSM Initial Research Show. That's right, it is the final event of the fall portion of the PGA schedule. But before we cover that, we have some congratulations to hand out for a very successful Houston Open. So first off, congratulations to my mother who hit her first outright wager, a top 10 on Stefan Jaeger. Congratulations on your first hit. Pop's Call had a very successful Showdown lineup this weekend, placing, I believe it was 21st in the contest he entered. So congratulations. But the biggest winner is James from Twitch chat. He showed me his DraftKings schedule or DraftKings slate that he entered for this weekend. It was a phenomenal weekend for James. This is going to be a rather low ball estimate, a very conservative estimate, but I believe it was in the neighborhood of a 500% return on investment. So congratulations, James. A huge weekend. Also took down his second Showdown contest in as many months. So outstanding job there. You can see some of the lineups that were put together for the slate and contests that James entered in the Friday Night Chill stream. Don't want to take too much credit. He did enter the lineups. He had full choice on who he was going to use and all that stuff. But that is now two lineups and contests that James has won. So a big congratulations to James for winning again this weekend. As for yours truly, I did have a top 10 on Stefan Jaeger, so that was positive. My DFS was very, very strong. I am going to cover my mixed condition model for the Houston Open tomorrow on Twitch. It was a very, very strong performance. I had a 6-6 lineup that performed fairly well. The players, particularly Taylor Pendrith, fell off over the weekend, but a very strong 6-6. And a very, very strong 5-6 with Tony Finau, Ben Taylor, Aaron Wise, and so on. Very, very, very successful week for me. Hope you shared in that success as some of the viewers have. But we move forward to the RSM, and as I mentioned, it is the final event for the fall portion of the PGA Tour schedule. So with that, this is a reminder that my schedule will change starting next week. I will have shows on YouTube on Tuesday evening and Friday evening. Tuesday evening will be still at 9 p.m. I will do that once per week. We'll probably cover a lot of the same things that we did last year during the off season, if you will. I will definitely be doing a full season or calendar year fantasy long show, if you will, as I play a lot of season long fantasy in golf. I will absolutely be doing my 5 good calls and bad calls shows. That was a pretty popular show last year. People enjoyed recollecting on the good and not so good recommendations I gave throughout the year. So be mindful of that moving forward. Starting next week, that Tuesday evening, and they will still be at 9 p.m. Eastern, but Tuesday evening I will cut back to once a week on YouTube for my regular content. And then Friday nights will happen every Friday night. Going to get that going. Probably won't be a lot of golf content, but again, as I've mentioned, it'll be kind of just a stream to where the community all gets together. We all decide what we might want to talk about or see, partake in a game, do whatever. So I hope you think about dropping by on a Friday evening and hang out with the rest of the community for a little bit. So I believe that is what I have as far as an intro. I will make sure I repeat or remind you of the bigger announcements at the end of the show and throughout the week. But we're here for the RSM, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there at your disposal. It's going to make you a much better gambler, a much smarter DFS player. It gives you everything that you need to be successful. This is how I have been, or what I've been using in tournament to be successful with these Showdown contests. Fantasy National has it all. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media. This will be Twitter and Instagram. I will have research this week for the RSM. Spent quite a bit of time yesterday, and I have found already a couple of interesting notes as far as a pattern for winners of the RSM previously. So if you want to see a summary of that research, give me a follow at Twitter and Instagram. If you want to see that research in full or a much more in-depth look at that research, give me a follow at Twitch. This is where I'll do the majority of that research. This is where a lot of my Showdown content is, especially on a Friday morning or on the weekend, as I am starting to ponder doing that if the Showdown success continues. So give me a follow at those various places for all of the content that you are interested in. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. If I did not shout you out in the intro and had a successful week, please put it in chat or in the comments of the video. Would love to be able to shout out more of my viewers who have big weeks. How was your Houston Open? And what are you looking forward to for the RSM? With this being the last PGA Tour event or official sanctioned PGA Tour event before the holiday break, who are you focusing on? How much do you know of the RSM Classic, the courses, and yes, courses, multiple, that are being used, all of that good stuff. So hoping to hear from you all. But let's dig in and do our initial research for the 2023 RSM. And we start with the tournament fact sheet. And as you will see, there are two different courses here at Sea Island Resort. As soon as my camera decides to focus, I'm hoping it decides to focus. Might be a better picture for you all if it doesn't. Focus. Maybe. Hopefully it gets ironed out. If not, might have to restart the stream here. Let's see. Maybe if I give it a little bit of a... Oh, there we go. All right. I have a successful week, and technology says, you know what? 1 week is enough. You don't need to be successful anymore. All right. We are here at Sea Island Resort. That is getting cut off. So we are at Sea Island Resort in St. Simons Island, Georgia. There are two courses. One, which is the main course, is labeled the Seaside Course, as the name suggests. It is right on the coast. This is the course that will be played the entirety of the weekend, round 3 and round 4, as well as one of the two qualifier rounds, or cut rounds, if you will. Tournament set up very similar to the Farmers Insurance at Torrey Pines. You have Torrey Pines North and Torrey Pines South, whereas Torrey Pines South is used exclusively on the weekend. Seaside is exclusively used in the weekend. But you also have the plantation course, which is more inland for the RSM. So we're going to cover the seaside courses. It is 75% of the rounds that a player will play, as long as they make it through the cut. They're actually fairly similar. A little bit of difference here and there, particularly in the architect, but the grass types, all of that is the same, just a different amount of bunkers and holes with water and play and all that stuff. So whereas Memorial Park was a very long par 70, over 7,400 yards, Seaside is not. It is the opposite. Right at 7,000 yards. So a par 70 measuring at 7,000. We are going to be looking at a lot of short course metrics this week. The plantation course is also short. A little bit longer at 7,060, but nowhere approaching 7,200 for the cutoff. So definitely short course metrics this week. The greens at the Seaside course are very large, 7,200 square feet. The average tour green is 6,000 square feet. Now the plantation course greens are much, much closer to average tour size, but the greens at the Seaside course at Sea Island Resort, very large at 7,200 square feet. There are 13 holes with water in play. Makes a lot of sense, especially since you're on the coast. You have the natural design of the course up against the ocean, with some holes taking water in play in that regard. Not a lot of bunkers, 47, so about 3 bunkers per hole. Not a lot of rough either. Whereas Memorial Park was very difficult because there was a lot of rough. The fairways are about as narrow as Memorial Park, but there's just not nearly as much rough, and it is much, much shorter. It has always been short rough here at Sea Island. But a lot of water in play. We are on Bermuda greens. They are cut generally very, very short. It is safe to go with fast Bermuda greens. They were lightning in 2021. But the interesting thing with Sea Island is that there is a little bit of paspalum throughout the course. Not on the greens, but there is paspalum in the fairways. The original Seaside course was a Harry Colt and Charles Allison design, renovated by Tom Fazio in 1999. The plantation course very recently went through a renovation by Davis Love III in 2019. So there's a look at Sea Island Resort this week for the RSM. James, my lineups turned out pretty darn well. My 6-6 actually faded. Taylor Pendrith was part of that 6-6 lineup. He had a terrible weekend. I did not have a lot of Tony Finau, but I did have Tony Finau and Ben Taylor together in a lineup that was a very profitable lineup. So it was a good week for me. I also had a top 10 on Stefan Jaeger. If you follow me at Twitter, you would have seen my my betting card. Gary Woodland, I thought was going to be very good on the weekend. He turned out to be good, very competitive, but take nothing away from Tony Finau. He played a very, very difficult course. He made it look easy, and it was not. He just was very good this week. But you, sir, are the big winner with the win in the Showdown contests. So if you happen to have missed the intro, if you are wanting to feel very, very good about yourself, replay the intro, as you got a significant shout out during the intro. But congratulations again on a very, very successful weekend in Showdown contests. But again, just a quick recap of the Sea Island Resort courses this year. Short par 70s, so we're going to look at a lot of short course metrics. The greens are very large, at least the Seaside course greens are large. Lots of holes with water in play. Not a lot of bunkers, We are on Bermuda greens, and they are generally cut very short, so fast and sometimes lightning Bermuda greens. But the interesting thing with the RSM is that there is paspalum throughout the course on the fairways. So there's a look at the RSM in terms of a GCSA tournament fact sheet. Let's move on over to Fantasy National. Don't want to get too far into it before we go into Fantasy National's course breakdown. But as you can see, I have a couple of filters already here. I have set this for the beginning of the calendar year. Let's take a look at some short course metrics very quickly. We know both of these courses are very short. Neither of them approach 7,100 yards. So no matter what day you play, you're going to be on a short course, or what course you play on what day. So your top performers on short courses in 2022, those players have been Seamus Power, JT Poston, Brian Harmon, Matthew Neesmith, Keith Mitchell, Ben Griffin, Ryan Armour, Denny McCarthy, Tom Hoagie, and Andrew Putnam. So there's your top 10 in terms of a total view of who has performed well on short courses. When we go to, or when we come back from the course breakdown of Fantasy National, we're going to be looking at a few other things throughout this week. But let's go ahead and move on over to that said course breakdown. And the first thing I like to do, I try to find the 9th and 10th most difficult holes at a course, see where par is. So the 9th and the 10th both play to a little bit under par. The 8th plays just to under par. 7th is 100th over par. So the par on this course is roughly the 7.5 most difficult hole, right between 7 and 8. That would tend to lead you to think that the course is easy, certainly on the average end of easy. That is a bit misleading, as this course is very, very easy. This tournament has produced some very low scores. For example, the par 5 15th plays to more than a half a shot under par, yields an eagle at 4.5%. Now the other par 5 does not yield a lot of eagles, only 8 tenths. But there are a lot of birdies. It plays to a quarter of a shot. But contrast the easiest hole, which plays to more than a half a shot under par, to the hardest hole, which is right before it, which plays to just a little bit above a tenth over par. So you can see the discrepancy there between easy and difficult, and there are much more easy holes, or holes that play under par, than there are holes that play above par. In fact, the par 4 14th is the only hole that plays to more than a tenth over par. Again, this is a pretty darn easy tournament. It has produced some very low scores, so we are going to be looking at easy metrics as well as short course metrics this week. But again, only one hole that yields an eagle, but it is a very good eagle chance. Yields it at 4.5%, quite a few birdie opportunities as well. Not a whole lot of drivable par 4s per se, but a lot of very short par 4s that are very, very attackable. You do have a couple of holes that can creep up and get you just due to water being on the hole. But overall, in terms of professional golf, not a difficult test. We move to shot type, and a very, very similar style of graph this week as we had last week at Houston. A lot of putting. Now approach is a lot closer to putting this week, but still strokes gained putting is the leading shot type for the top 10s. We move to the top 5s. Putting starts to gain some distance on approach. Off the tee and around the green, still lagging behind. Winners all in putting. So we're going to be looking at a whole lot more Bermuda putting particularly fast Bermuda putting this week. And for the winners, short game tends, and around the green particularly, tends to be important as well. So lots of putting. We are not going to ignore strokes gained approach. Off the tee, very, very mitigated in importance. And we'll see about around the green throughout the week. But again, another emphasis on putting this week. And you see for the winners, it is a short game course with 2 strokes per round in short game with 1.4 in terms of ball striking. We'll come back to the top 10s. Strokes gained by hole by par, fairly balanced. Again, don't be misled by the graph size. Look at your y-axis here. So these are all 3 very darn close to each other. Par 5s are above 1500ths. The other 2 fall below it, but very close in terms of overall, which is a little surprising. Again, there are only 2 par 5s, but you do have to score well. The par 5 14th is, or par 5 15th, excuse me, does play to a half shot under par, is a very good eagle chance. So a lot of players are taking advantage of that. Move to the top 5s. Again, still very, very balanced. Par 5s still maintaining a lead, but the par 4s are gaining some distance away from the par 3s in terms of the top 5s. And then winners, again, a pretty similar distribution throughout, and the par 5s actually do gain some distance away from the other 2. So quite a bit of emphasis on par 5s to start this week. Par 3s, we'll see how important they are. I am curious as to seeing these par 4s not be terribly important since there are 12 of them on the course. But the graphs show that they aren't the most important here, like they were at, or similarly to Houston, where they weren't important. So it'll be interesting to see when we go to Microsoft Excel what it is saying. But there's a look at the strokes gained by hole by par and the shot type. Lots of putting, lots of par 5 again this week. Hole composition, we have 2 par 3s from 175 to 200, 2 par 3s from 200 to 225. So it'll be interesting to see if there is a range between these 2, if there is a leading factor between the 2. But I can guarantee you there is going to be a lot of scrutiny on the 400 to 450. Half of the holes total and 75% of the par 4s alone fall into this range, 400 to 450. So we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this range of par 4s this week, and we'll see just how much they lead to success here at the RSM. You do have one short, not drivable, but short par 4, 350 to 400. 2 longer par 4s, 450 to 5. Both par 5s fall between 550 and 600. Approach shot distribution, majority of the approach shots here come from 125 to 175 broken out, which makes a lot of sense. Again, a short course, not a bomb fest per se. You do not take driver on every hole, so even though the course is short, you do have your 8 and 9 irons as opposed to your wedges for approach shots. But nothing like Houston, nothing like the Arnold Palmer, where you are demanded 200 plus irons a lot. So we'll see if any of these lengths of proximity matter, and in particular if it's 125, 150, 150, 175. Speaking to the difficulty or lack thereof of the tournament, the cut line last year was -7. That might be the lowest I've seen. I've seen -6 a few times. I can't recall seeing a -7. That is astronomically low. But historically here at St. Simon's Island, -7, -5, -4, -6. This has been a very, very easy tournament over the years. And you can see that here, almost 20% birdies versus 12.5% bogeys. So even stacking the doubles on top, you're going to get a lot more birdies than you will bogeys and doubles. Driving accuracy, very, very high here. These fairways are generally pretty easy to hit. However, some of that is due to course design where you are laying up some. Not all of it. This course, again, is easy, so the fairways are generally easy to hit, but there are some forced layups. So 70% average driving accuracy here at the RSM versus 62% at the average tour event. Green regulation percentage, again, these greens are large and this tournament is easy, so that creates a green regulation percentage that is miles ahead of the average tour event. 74% greens hit in regulation here at St. Simon's Island at Sea Island Resort versus 65.8-ish% for the average tour event. Now, players are slightly less successful scrambling here, and that could be a contributing factor to why the around the green might be a small little bit of a factor. We'll see throughout the week. But scrambling slightly less successful than the average tour event. Three putts a little bit higher than the average tour event. Again, not a lot of surprise. You've got very big greens, and these greens are fast and have played lightning in the past. So you get that combination. You get some three putts. You can see driving distance much lower here, almost 10 yards. Again, it's a short course, so you're not going to hit driver on every hole anyway, and there are holes that force you to lay up, so not a lot of distance to be factored in this week. Green regulation proximity, again, speaking to the ease of the course, the lack of difficulty here. Even though these greens are large, the proximity is quite a bit closer to the hole than the average tour event. So you're going to get lots of low scores. And the average distance of birdie putt made, looking to be about in the 10 to 15 to 20 foot range. You got some 25 foot plus putts that are falling. I imagine that's where a lot of that strokes gained putting is, when guys are rolling in 25 plus footers. That's going to help out your strokes gained putting numbers. It'll be interesting to see tomorrow if I was correct in the 10 to 20 foot range for the Houston Open. I'm looking forward to gathering that data and critiquing myself, as the mixed condition model, or at least the rankings, turned out to be pretty darn solid, but I am curious to see what the exact metrics were tomorrow. So if you want to see that, make sure you tune in on Twitch tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. But there is a look at Sea Island Resort. I keep forgetting it for whatever reason. Seaside. If I mention Seaside, that is the main course we're going to be looking at. So I'm probably just going to keep saying Seaside. There's a look at the course in terms of a Fantasy National scorecard and chart breakout. So now that we have that info, I mentioned that this course is very easy. So we've looked at short. Let's look at easy. Since the beginning of 2022, your top performers when a course or a round has been easy, those players have been Seamus Power, Tom Hoagie, Tony Finau, Taylor Moore, Andrew Putnam, JJ Spawn, David Lipsky, Jason Day, Will Gordon, and Matt Kuchar. So again, just like the Bermuda, in the sense that I've been very low on him, and incorrectly so, Seamus Power, number one when it's short, number one when it's easy. Somebody to really begin your week researching and putting a star next to. He is number one in both those categories. Andrew Putnam has been there on both, I believe. If not on the short, he was very close to the top 10. Tony Finau, coming off a win, he's been playing lights out for the past 6 months or so. Tom Hoagie, his win at Pebble Beach makes a whole lot of sense, and why he is here in the easy course metrics. JJ Spawn, his win, I believe, was at the Valero? No, it was the Valero, because Byron Nelson is KH Lee. I believe his win was at the Valero, which is generally pretty average in difficulty. Will Gordon has been playing a lot better as of late. So yeah, there's a look at some of your top performers when a round has been easy. But now that we know we are on Bermuda, and I'll bring you over here to the historic conditions. Some years they don't have the speeds for the plantation course. Since it is the alternate course, they will always have the speeds for Seaside. You see, last year they did slow it down a couple of rounds due to the wind, but generally speaking, it is fast, and they even allowed it to get lightning a couple of times. So, I'm going to safely assume that it's going to be fast. I don't think I want to put lightning in there. It only played lightning one year. I don't want to put average, not yet at least, because I have not looked at Windfinder. We will do that tomorrow. But on fast Bermuda greens, your top putters in 2022. Yeah, there's enough rounds here in the teens. Sure. Your top putters on fast Bermuda greens have been Kevin Kisner, Martin Traynor, Davis Riley, Brian Gay, Scott Stallings, Scott Brown, Peter Malnati, Rory Sabatini, Chesson Hadley, and Brendan Todd. So good stuff there. Let's see. Any overlaps here? I don't think so. I think these are 10 brand new names from strokes gained total easy and strokes gained total short. I take that back. Davis Riley was there for strokes gained easy and now putting. But I do not recognize any of these other names in terms of being in the top 10 when it was easy and top 10 when it was short. So very interesting there. But there's a look at your top fast Bermuda putters in 2022. Remove that metric. I'm going to take a look at a couple of things here. Again, my preferred statistic, strokes gained approach. I just believe it is the most indicative of long-term success. So, since July 1st, your top strokes gained approach players have been Tom Hoagie, Trey Mullinax, Jason Day, Lee Hodges, Mark Hubbard, Ben Griffin, Tony Finau, Callum Tarrant, Sam You'll Know, and Adam Schenk. Now these will change tomorrow. Since we were back on U.S. soil, we had ShotLink data. We get all of that, all of those statistics. So I imagine Tony Finau will probably rise. Mark Hubbard will probably drop. He had an atrocious week. So on. Trey Mullinax had a very good week, and put an asterisk or a star next to Trey Mullinax. He is somebody, at least early on in the week, that I have my eye on, and I am very curious to see what he opens up in terms of betting odds. He generally plays short courses well, and he plays easy courses very well. So I am really have my eye on Trey Mullinax, especially since he generally plays well in the wind as well. We aren't going to be looking at wind tonight, but I have my eye on Trey Mullinax to start off my week, as well as Seamus Power for the obvious, being number one when a round is easy and when a course is short. But there's a look at your top strokes gained approach players. I'm not going to do anything with strokes gained around the green until we go through Microsoft Excel. We'll be focusing on that tomorrow. Let's move on into, very quickly, let's do proximity. We'll see who might be good to look at in the 125 to 150 and 150 to 175. Just again, very quickly. We'll sort on this one. So some of your best proximity players from 125 to 150, Brendan Steele, Nick Hardy, Russell Knox, Tom Hoagie, Troy Merritt, Jason Duffner, Chris Kirk, Ben Martin, Zach Johnson, and Ben Griffin. Surprisingly, none of these players are top 20 even. When you go to 150 to 175, the closest would be Jason Duffner, 22nd. However, you have Ryan Moore down here, who's 15th in 125 to 150, but 5th 150 to 175. Ryan Armour, 19th and 3rd. Jonathan Bird, 23rd and 7th. Mark Hubbard, Justin Lauer 1st from 150 to 175 and in the top 30. So it's very interesting to see that none of the premium 100 to 125 to 150 players are premium from 150 to 175 as well. Joey, thanks for jumping in chat there. How you doing? How was your weekend? Hope it was a very successful one. Crazy weather we are having where we are in the country, as we were playing some golf last week and now we have snow. So, yay. But hope your weekend went well. Thanks for jumping in via Twitch chat. If we sort on 150 to 175, again, no one is premium at both. We've mentioned Armour, we've mentioned Lauer, Hubbard, Ryan Moore, Jonathan Bird. So we'll put some scrutiny into seeing if either of these matter in terms of leaderboard success. Because if it does, you can clearly see just by the list of names who you would want to value over the other. Let's see. The other thing we can take a casual look at, only because half of the whole, 50% of the entire course and 75% of the par fours fall in this range here. So they're going to be very, very important. Let's take a quick look at who is good at par fours from 400 to 450 yards. So again, since July 1st, your top performers on par fours of that length: Ben Griffin, Andrew Putnam, Taylor Montgomery, J.J. Spawn, Lee Hodges, S.H. Kim, Kevin Kisner, Tom Hoagie, Cameron Percy, and Denny McCarthy. So some more names to begin your week researching or having an eye on as these players play the predominant holes at Seaside well. But that's going to do it for the majority of the Fantasy National portion. We can take a look here very quickly at the tournament conditions. Again, the course has always been short. We have always been on Bermuda. The greens are generally very soft, very receptive. Hitting fairways have generally been easy. Now, when the wind does pick up, it can get difficult, as the scoring can somewhat get difficult. But we've seen from the course breakdown and the sheer amount of holes that play under par, the number of birdies versus bogeys here at Seaside, this course is easy. Oh, shoot. So definitely going to be looking more so at easy as opposed to difficult. You can see there are a few rounds of average. You have difficult thrown in there every once in a while, but it's not very often. So definitely going to be looking at easy. Now, this we'll be able to take a look at, and I have taken or brought this data over to Microsoft Excel as I normally do, but because the RSM has been played at Sea Island Resort dating back to, as far as I can remember, and as far back in Fantasy National goes as 2012, we can take a look here at who has played this event well. So your leading strokes gained total player in the past 5 years here at the RSM is Webb Simpson. He has 3 top 10s, including 2 podium finishes. A middling, he did withdraw way back in 2018, but he has played this event very well. Zach Johnson has also played this event very, very well. So you're seeing already the kind of guys, the types of players that perform well here. Kevin Kisner, these players that don't hit it far. It's not that they don't need to. They don't hit it far. They are very consistent with their wedges, with their short irons. They're generally pretty darn good putters as well. They're fairway finders. These are the types of players that perform well here at Seaside. Matthew Neesmith, the green and regulation guy that he is. Vaughn Taylor, another pretty darn good putter and short game player. He has not putt well lately, but over the course of his career, he has been above tour average. But he's been really struggling lately. But these types of players are who generally perform well here. Your Brian Harmon's 4 for 5. JJ Spawn 4 for 5. You got Andrew Landry, who is 3 for 5 with 2 top 5s. He's missed the cut twice, but 2 top 5s. Robert Streb won in 2021. He also won 2015, maybe 2016, but he's won this event twice. These types of players are who you're looking at. Surprising to see Luke List up here, even though he is not a good putter at all. He has a top 5, a top 10, a clunker, and a miscut, but he has played this course very, very well, or this tournament very, very well. At the other end of the spectrum, players who have not played this event well for whatever reason. Sepp Straka, 1 for 4. Joseph Bramlett is 0 for 3. Brendan Steele is 1 for 3. Sam Ryder, 1 for 5. Robbie Shelton's 0 for 2. Davis Love III, 2 for 4. He was the architect of the Plantation course, so it's surprising to see him not necessarily be the strongest here. Michael Kim is 0 for 2 with 2 withdrawals. Peter Malnati, 2 for 5. Kevin Streelman, 3 for 5, but he has a top 20 and 2 very uninspiring cuts made. So there's a look at some of the players that don't perform well here at the RSM. So that's going to do it for the Fantasy National portion of the show tonight. Let's move on over to Microsoft Excel and let's get a feel for how this course plays. And at least percentage-wise is going to be very, very interesting. As you can see, none of these metrics here are saying that they are important against a full field course. Putting being the closest to an average. All of these others are much, much lower. You got 43% below average, 33, 41. Distance quite clearly does not matter here. 70% less important than the average full field course. Now, fairways is a little bit more important than the average full field course. Greens, I would have thought they wouldn't have been important. These greens are massive. This course is easy. I did not think greens were going to be an important factor this week. Surprising to see good drives gained this negative. So we'll see in the leaderboards tomorrow on the Data Dive show if fairways actually are indeed the statistic we want to look at from this page view in Fantasy National. Birdies and bogeys, again, an easy course. You're going to have to go low. We'll see who can get the most birdies when a course is short, when a course is easy. All of that is more important, at least data-wise, saying to get birdies as opposed to avoid bogeys. Although there are some holes that can come up and get you, so double bogey avoidance could be a thing. I generally don't use that, especially in a non-major. But again, my assumption was it was going to be birdies gained, and the data is backing that up. Par 3s, 5% more important. Okay, I can see that. We had 2 par 3s that measure to this length and 2 that measure to this length. So I imagine that This is one of the par threes when they get moved, and tees and pins and all that stuff. Now it'll be interesting to see because 2 of the 4 do fall into this range. Perhaps it is this range, but again, that's what the Data Dive show will be for tomorrow. We'll go through prior leaderboards. I'll also be doing this on Twitch tomorrow morning, but it is saying significantly that the 200 to 225 par 3s are more important than the 175 to 200s. So we'll take a look. Par 4s, again, about 8% more important than the average full field course. 32% more important in terms of 400 to 450. So very clearly we're going to put a lot of emphasis here. Now, there's only one hole that measured to this length on the scorecard. So even though it is saying it is 90% more important than the other full field courses, there's only one hole here. The fact that you have the majority of the par 4s here and they are so significantly higher in terms of against other full field courses makes me feel very, very strongly that 400 to 450 par 4s are going to be a massive part of this week's research. And then par 5s, this is what I would have thought before looking at the graphs in Fantasy National. With only 2 par 5s, it would have felt like the par 5s were mitigated in importance. This is what it's saying here. However, we saw graphically that it was the most important strokes gained by hole by par. So we'll have to see what's going on there in the Data Dive show tomorrow. If there is, well, there are only 2 par 5s. They both fall into this range. And you're seeing that it is 2.5% more important than the average full field course. So the 2 par 5s are playing slightly higher than average. Okay, I can see that. Again, we'll take a pretty good look into it, but I imagine 550 to 600 par 5s will be a part of the mixed condition model at the end of the week. Now, let's take a look at these proximities. And right off the bat, total procs, somewhat important. Even though these greens are large, you saw that the average green in regulation proximity was 2 feet closer to the hole than the average course. That's just because this tournament is easy. But the 2 big ranges of proximities are showing that they are massively important in terms of against other full field courses. So again, it'll be interesting to go through prior leaderboards and see what we are seeing in that regard, because it looks like it's both at this moment. And then putting, not a whole lot here. It's saying the 15 to 20 and the 20 to 25. I don't know if I believe that. We might see something to that effect in the prior leaderboards tomorrow night. But I was more so concerned wanting to look at this, and it's showing that both of the ranges of proximity are important. The one range of par 5s here is above full field course average. The predominant length of par 4s is very important. So that makes me feel a lot better, or it gives me a lot more confidence moving forward in the week with the research around those specific metrics there. Finally, let's look at some players and how they have performed specifically here at Seaside. And when I say Seaside, this is for the RSM tournament. So the Plantation course metrics are in here. It's their full tournament course. I am saying Seaside so I don't forget, because I have forgotten twice already tonight, between Seaside, Sea Island Resort, St. Simon's Island, Georgia, all of it, all the S's and all that is getting in the way. But this is full RSM tournament performance. I am going to filter out the players that have only played it once. You see Taylor Moore last year did tie for 8th. He played exceptionally well. But let's remove the players who have only played it once, get a feel for the guys that have played well consistently, what they've been good at. You remember Webb Simpson, he is the most strokes gained total player here at Seaside for the past 5 years. a lot in approach. He's actually been pretty darn good off the tee. So we'll see if it's fairways, if he actually is gaining a little bit of distance on his peers in layups and whatnot. He's been good around the green, good putting, but it's a lot in strokes gained approach. Let's see. Zach Johnson has been very, very good here. 5 for 5 with an average of a 20th place finish. He's been pretty darn balanced, most of it in approach, quite a bit in putting, doing Zach Johnson things. Let's see, we have Keith Mitchell. Surprising to see Keith Mitchell having played this so well, since he generally plays difficult courses well. But he's been doing Keith Mitchell things mostly off the tee. Brendan Todd, putting. Jason Day, putting. Patton Kazire, putting. Let's see. John Huh, pretty balanced. JJ Spawn, very balanced. He's been pretty much average off the tee, but balanced other way in all of the other aspects. Brian Harmon has not hit his approaches very well, but he's been more short game oriented. Okay. We look here again. Oh gosh dang it. You look, I mean, driving distance, just not a big factor. Will Gordon always is going to be positive seemingly. That's what a big strength of his game is. Same with Wyndham Clark and Keith Mitchell, but distance does not matter here. Simpson's been a little bit positive, but Zach Johnson, Brian Harmon, John Huh, these players are not long, and they have been very successful here. You see the fairways. William McGirt, Brian Harmon, Brendan Todd. Although Brendan Todd, that is his game anyway. Let's take a look at birdies and bogeys. Again, filtering out the players who have only played it once. Let's go down to the players who have averaged top 40 or better. So birdies gained here, that's an average of a 2.2. This is an average of a 1.7. So again, birdies gained showing to be the stronger of the two. You have one player that is negative in terms of the bogeys. Nobody was negative in terms of birdies. So it makes a lot of sense. Par threes, we had 2 each in these ranges. That's an average of 0.1. This is an average of 0.3. We'll see how much par threes matter. It looked like it wasn't too big of a factor when we looked graphically in Fantasy National. 400 to 450 par fives. Yeah, look at this. There's a lot here. You got a pretty significant negative from Wyndham Clark and a slight negative from William McGirt, but otherwise these are some pretty strong numbers here. That's an average of a 1.7. That's a 1.5, but again, there's only one hole that measures on the scorecard to this length. But you see, I mean, with 12 par 4s, none of these players are negative in terms of par 4 performance. You just got to play par 4s well, especially when they're the predominant hole on the PGA Tour. Par 5s, again, there's a slight negative, a very slight negative, and the rest of the players that average a top 40 are all positive. Yep. Okay, look at this. Go scroll over to the proximity. There's a lot of heavy green in the 150 to 175. A lot of heavy green here. Interesting. Very interesting. So, at least in terms of players who have played it more than 1 year. So this average is a 9.2. This average is a 13.9. Doesn't sound like a lot. That's fairly significant. So it seems like at least data-wise, early in the week, Sunday evening, looks like 150 to 175 is leading in terms of proximity and the importance. But we'll see. That's what tomorrow the data dive will be for. We'll take a long look at this tomorrow on Twitch, which is where I'll be doing a lot of my winter research as well. I have found a few patterns that I feel pretty good about, so I am anxious to see who what the odds are on some of the players. Again, I've got a pretty big asterisk on Seamus Power. He's just number one in strokes gained total when it's short, strokes gained total when it's easy. I've got a feeling on Trey Mullinax. He generally plays easy courses well. He's coming off a very strong performance at Houston, so I'm curious to see what his odds are tomorrow. But that's going to do it for the initial research show tonight for the RSM. Again, a reminder, I'll be live tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. on Twitch, doing a whole lot of research, critiquing my Houston Open mixed condition model. Seemed to have performed very strongly. Again, congratulations to all of the winners of the community, especially James for taking down your second Showdown contest in as many months. Quite a return on investment. So strong performance from you this weekend. Congratulations. Thanks for tuning in and watching and listening. I always appreciate the support. Last reminder, this is the last week of the PGA Tour, or at least sanctioned PGA Tour, for the fall portion of the schedule. So I will be live after this week, Tuesdays and Fridays. This week will still be the same. Tonight, Monday night, Wednesday night, and then the Twitch streams in the mornings. But starting next week, I will be doing a Tuesday evening show and a Friday night chill stream. So make sure you set your reminders for that. But thanks again for tuning in and watching and listening. Hopefully you had a lot of success this week at the Houston Open for all of the wagers that you made this past week at the Houston Open, for all of the DFS contests you entered this past week at the Houston Open. Until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive Show, may all your bets be profitable.